Here we go.
Hello everyone, good afternoon, and thank you for joining this Q&A session on EFAMA's AI system assessment tool. We're really happy to have you here with us today, and we hope this session is useful to you. This is the first time you're interacting with the AI tool, or if you have already interacted with the AI tool in the past and you have some more detailed questions that you would like to ask us. So maybe could we go to the next slide, please? Maybe some housekeeping. You can see at the top of the screen the Q&A button. So any questions that you may have during this presentation, you can just submit them through there, and they will be addressed after the session. So maybe running through the agenda of today, a brief introduction on the AI tool and the work of the AI Task Force, and then the chair of EFAMA's AI Task Force, Ulf Hervik, who's here presenting with me, will introduce us to the concept of the AI system assessment tool, do a live presentation of the tool, and then we can open the floor to address a Q&A session of the webinar. But maybe before we get started, I would like to provide some context regarding the origin and the purpose of the AI tool, and also on the work of EFAMA's AI Task Force. So the Artificial Intelligence Task Force of EFAMA has been set up in 2024, following the adoption of the EU AI Act. And we inaugurated this new group to help our members navigate the complexities of AI and to expand EFAMA's presence in the digital space. The first deliverable for EFAMA's AI Task Force was the creation of the AI System Assessment Tool, or AI tool for short. And this tool was developed with the objective of helping our industry address the new requirements introduced by the AI Act. And in particular, the AI tool supports firms in taking stock of the AI systems they rely on, and also to help them perform the assessment of the systems and use cases in line with the risk-based approach introduced by the AI Act. The AI tool that we will present today is the result of a collaborative effort between the members of our AI Task Force, who represent a wide range of expertise from the asset management industry, encompassing areas of technology, business development, and compliance within member firms of our industries. And although originally created by the asset management industry, the AI tool remains flexible enough to provide guidance and facilitate regulatory efforts for firms of all sizes, from firms coming from different sectors of the financial services industry and beyond. And without much further ado, I would like to introduce the chair of our AI Task Force, Ulf Hervik, who will provide us with a more detailed explanation of the tool. He will then provide us with a live demonstration of the tool, so we can run through its different functionalities, and then we can open the floor to participants to answer any questions that you may submit through the Q&A button that you can see on the top of the screen. So I give over the floor to you, Ulf.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Franco, and welcome also from my side. Thanks for joining us to this very first session on the AI tool. So I'm super proud and have to say thanks again to all the members of the AI Task Force with whom this hadn't been possible to create, and we hope it also finds a value for your organization. The reason why we created this Q&A session today is really to address any questions that you may have when already interacting and testing the tool itself, but also to get a bit of a market feedback how this may further evolve. So before we go into the demo, let me explain you on 2 slides, and then we're already done with the presentation slides. What is the concept and how can you understand and read and use the AI system assessment tool? So in principle, it's composed out of 2 levels. The first level shall allow your firm to document on a high level what are the AI use cases that you have in place or that you plan to put in place in your organization. We had certainly discussions around firms planning to start documenting even use cases that are in the ideation phase. You could do that, but once we look into the demo, you will see that obviously in such a case, not all of the data points that are addressed in level 1 are then even applicable or can be filled out. So therefore, for firms who may have the question, could I use the template and the tool also for my list of ideas that I have? In principle, yes, but then be conscious not all of the data points you will be able to populate. Now, because of the background that Franco explained, what the original reason was why we started to developing this tool is to allow firms not just to document, but also to do this regulatory assessment of AI use cases against the EU AI Act. And that brings us to the level 2. The level 2 then is a much more detailed and sophisticated overview of the regulatory requirements in the first place coming from the EU AI Act. But the more we discussed in our task force, the more we realized you cannot really look at AI use cases from an EU AI Act perspective in isolation. Because depending on the use case you want to implement in your organization, you have to consider other regulatory frameworks in conjunction with the EU AI Act. As an example, you may have voice recording where suddenly you have not just an AI summary, but due to the fact that you start capturing voice and video from individuals, you have to look into GDPR. Or if you do that for investment advice, you may have to look into AI Act and MiFID II. And if you use third-party solutions for AI, then you may also enter into the DORA space. That's, however, where we stopped in the task force. We said, okay, we have looked into use case documentation and regulatory assessment from AI Act, GDPR, MiFID II, and DORA perspective, but that certainly is not a comprehensive list of regulatory frameworks you may have to look into as well, because you may have, if you're a content creator or have areas where you create new content, then even copyright law and all of these other things to consider. Conscious of the fact that there is many stakeholders in an organization who want to understand certain high-level metrics like how many use cases do we have, what is the status of the use cases, etc., we have on top of these 2 levels created an AI inventory dashboard. So to give all of this a face, on the next slide we will see a snapshot of these 3 levels then in total. We have the high-level assessment, which you would always start with. We have the regulatory assessment that interacts with the level 1, and then we have the reporting. The reporting is already formatted in a way that it's automatically updating whatever you change in the level 1, and that it's print ready as a PDF to be shared with any other internal or external stakeholders you want to share this with. On the right-hand side, you see a barcode to directly get to the page where you can download and request the download of the AI tool in case you haven't done so yet. You will, of course, also find that on the EFAMA website to request the download directly. So without further ado, let me then take over the screen share and we get into the tool itself. So when you request a download, you will receive 4 different versions, and it's not because we have created 4 different versions of the same thing. It's more due to the fact that we have created an empty version of the AI tool, one version where we have populated 4 sample use cases for you so that you can find yourself a bit with some reference use cases. And this we have duplicated because we are going to share with everyone requesting the tool an Excel version of the tool and an XLSM version that contains a macro. But conscious of the fact that due to security restrictions, firewalls, etc., not everyone in your organization is able to work with Excel files that contain macros, you may want to rely on the Excel version. What is the difference between the 2? The sole difference between the 2 versions, the Excel and the XLSM version, is that in the level 1, you will see that in a bit, there is some fields where you have drop downs and you may say, I can't just select one, I may want to select multiple values. And the macro version obviously allows you to multi-select. The version that is the XLS version only allows you to select one value at a time. You have this cover and introduction tab as a first part. And in this part, you have a high-level explanation of the concept that you just saw, some typical descriptions of who can use that. As Franco said, it's not just for the fund industry. AI is a universal topic, and therefore maybe other firms want to leverage this as well. You can certainly also translate the tool into an actual software solution. That is absolutely up to you. So can it be modified is a standard question. Absolutely, it can be modified. What we have intentionally left out as data points, for example, is anything in relation to the economics of an AI use case, because it's really down to each individual firm to say what are the values that you want to capture to, for example, determining the return on investment of an AI use case. That clearly has been out of scope for us because we wanted to only look at it from a regulatory compliance perspective. The disclaimer is probably one of the important bits because, of course, you remain responsible for what you are populating within the tool and the values that you're using, as well as, like said before, there is potentially other regulatory frameworks that you may want to consider. Moving on to the dashboard as a first. As said before, you see it's print ready and keep some high-level KPIs like what is the status of the use cases, what is the risks, and these are the categories according to the EU AI Act. What is the technology types that I'm using so that a firm may also understand, do I rely heavily on Gen AI or something else? And then one of the important bits, expert in the loop and deployments. So again, everything will update automatically. We will also test that live, and I hope Murphy is not around so that the test and demo really works. Last but not least, there is some operational KPIs regarding the assessment. We put in place a deadline of an annual revision of each AI use case in order to confirm it's still live, it's still working as expected, etc., etc. And last but not least, some sort of regulatory overview where you can see, do you actually have use cases that are just on the EU AI Act side, or do you also have use cases that depend on other regulatory frameworks and their related status? Now looking into the level one. The level one is a simple Excel list. As simple as it looks, I think it took us in the group quite a lot of meetings to discuss and review the individual data points. And our maxim has really been that we only wanted to capture data points that we feel are relevant to make a judgment on the regulatory and risk side, as well as to identify in a unique way AI use cases. Now, often we got the question and the discussion, if I have a knowledge base, would I then just have one line or could I have multiple when I use the same AI system, for example? Now, also here, that depends on how you want to document this, because let's not forget, you may have different target audiences for your knowledge base, and consequentially, you may want to create different type of knowledge bases. It's now up to you to say it's one line because I always use the same underlying AI system, or I actually create one line per use case because the target audience may be different. If we now look at the first data points, we obviously have the entry date, the use case name, the purpose, and the concrete scenario. And that is exactly the thing where you could make a distinction in the case of a knowledge base. The knowledge base may in principle always serve the same purpose, but the concrete scenario may be different. The same is true that depending on the scenario, the use case owner as well as the audience may be a different one. In terms of input and output data, these are typical data points where you have an individual list of selection criteria, but you may not just have one. You may have multiple input data points or input types of data. The same is probably true for the output data. And also before we get some questions on the content of the values that are selectable, in the group at one point we decided to stop and not have philosophical discussion about the taxonomy and potential values for each individual field. What we realized was we have so many different firms and so many different views that, of course, we need to make the tool customizable to your own taxonomy. So all of the values in each field and each dropdown that you see are suggestions based on the discussion from the group, but they do not prevent you to update and to customize it in your very own way. If you would like to do so, I would encourage you to go to the data value list. In the data value list, you see all the lookup values for each of the individual fields, and customization, therefore, is as simple as updating values in these lists. You have this for the level 1, and you have this for the level 2. Now, coming back to the level 1, we have obviously output and input data, and in some way, the data sensitivity is then also linked to what the input and output data is. But one of the important data points I would like to highlight is really this topic expert in the loop, because it's somehow close to my heart in that sense, as that very often people use the terminology human in the loop, but we said, no, it's a difference whether I have a human in the loop or I have an expert in the loop. And the knowledge base remains a great example in this case. You may have a knowledge base in your firm that all employees have access to prompt policies and governances or other corporate information. Now, all employees can be considered as the human in the loop, because everyone with their professional expertise should in some way be able to verify, but also at the same time has to trust the information coming back from the AI system, because you're of course not the expert who has written a certain policy and governance. If you, on the other hand, have a knowledge base, let's say for the legal department, and you prompt something like, give me the exact phrase to a certain topic that we have across all of our contracts, then suddenly you start having an expert in the loop, because of course the users will only be the employees and team members of the legal department, and you must expect that they, based on their expertise, can absolutely judge whether the AI system has provided an accurate answer or rather a false or even hallucinated answer. Now we come to the more technical data points, which is what is the AI system type and the type of connection. The connection is whether it's connected to the outside world or only within your organization, because very often there is the question, what happens with my data? Is it training models, etc., etc.? Then what is the technology? Also here, we had a discussion, is this the right list for dropdowns? Because depending on with whom you speak, you find different lists of AI technology types. I would defer back to the customization. If you feel that there is some missing, take the list on the top data value list and just update it according to your needs. Then whether it's an actual in-house solution or an external solution, in this context, you have the possibility to add the provider name. Adding the provider name, in particular when it's an external solution, brought our members just recently to the point that they said, we could actually leverage this AI system assessment tool already for our due diligence when working and using with third-party solution providers who use AI. So in the context of DORA, what we learned from some of our members is they've started to use the level 1 template, not the entire one, but the level 1, to send it out to their third-party providers in order to capture the information. If they are now sort of reluctant and say, why would I want to populate that? The argument is rather clear, because any other firm they are selling their AI product or system to may have rather sooner than later the same questions. And therefore they could on their side use this AI system assessment tool to populating this for all of their products that they offer once. And whenever they have from a firm a question coming regarding the details of their AI system, they can just share the same file. Then we have the status questions, where we have the use case status, deployment, release date, and next assessment. This next assessment is then based on which we calculate the KPIs that you may remember from the dashboard. What you see now is everything related to the regulatory assessment. So there is an internal check area in the level 2. There is the AI check, the AI risk level, GDPR, MiFID II, and DORA. The regulatory columns, AI check, GDPR, MiFID II, DORA, they will all be automatically populated depending on whatever you flag in the level 2 for the respective use case. The internal check we have created because we understand also that some of the firms who may use such a tool have already existing risk frameworks and want to just integrate this because they say AI is not something super new in the context of risk management. It's just another new risk category we have to start managing. So you can certainly do that. Other firms have said we use AI system assessment tool, not just for the technical aspects and the use case management, but also linking it to our process management. You can do that as well. The ultimate risk level is a data point you would flag here. This is not automatically determined because we want to put you as a user in the position to assign the ultimate risk. Again, we wanted to do the test here regarding the automatic update of the dashboard. I'm going to the top and we have the use case by risk category. At the moment, we have not a single one in limited risk. I'm going back and I'm changing this to limited risk. And then if everything works and now Murphy is not around, you see that the dashboard is automatically adapting like magic. Now, moving from the level 1 into the level 2, again, the level 2 will cover EU AI Act check, GDPR check, MiFID and DORA. We have quite a comprehensive list of assessment questions. The first one is the internal assessment. You may remember it. That's up to you to how and what you want to populate this. Here we have put some examples, like what is the process associated to the AI system? Is a training according to Article 4 of EU AI Act needed for the AI system and its users? Does the system, for example, have a feedback mechanism? So there is full flexibility, whatever you want to ask. One of the conceptual logics you have to understand is, while the level 1 is a line-based listing of use cases, in the level 2, the lines turn into the columns. So in my case, where I've been using for the demo this pre-populated version that you would also get when you request the tool, you see my 4 use cases here: corporate governance knowledge base, supplier contract repository, meeting assistant, and fund selector. They were the lines in the level 1, and they have turned into the columns of level 2. We have already expanded this to up to, I think, 20. In case you have more use cases that you have already live, feel free to just add additional columns as you have populated additional lines into the level 1. Now, some of the feedbacks we have already received is that this level 2 is quite comprehensive. And indeed it is, because it captures not just 10, 20 or 30 lines, but probably rather like 70 or 100 if you look at all regulatory aspects in total. But what you have to understand is that the focus on the EU AI Act is obviously on unacceptable and high-risk systems, which means that if you have been answering to the section AI system risk classification already, risk and high, to these questions, and you have identified that actually all of the above is answered with a no, you can stop there and you must not continue with any other questions, because all the other questions and obligations, they only apply according to EU AI Act on high risk or unacceptable risk use cases. That's why everything that comes here, and I could drill down in each of them, but we're not going in the detail here anyway. They are no longer relevant and you can just ignore them and update the status to done. Status update is then the last bit on this level 2. The status update you always have at the top of a section. So you see here EU AI Act as the line, and you have the first use case and status done. And if I would put them as in progress, then in my level 1, it would turn into in progress. I'm doing the change again into done, and we will see that it turned into done. So therefore, that is the link between the level 1 and the level 2. Concluding on the light demo with the other references, you obviously have then the assessment according to GDPR, MiFID II, and DORA. Depending on your use case, you may keep them as the default says not applicable, or you want to switch that into either in progress, to be done, or done, considering that you may have decided and understood that GDPR is a relevant other regulation and/or MiFID and/or DORA. If you were to add other regulatory frameworks, you would just append them at the end. And we have created this regulatory annex tab so that you also can make references to why you have added certain other regulations, what's the link to the actual regulation, and the name. I think with this, I'm at the end of the light demo. And Franco, we are open to any questions from the audience. So maybe for while people are typing in questions, some of the feedbacks that we already got from members was what's the typical time that it takes to actually populate this, right? And one of our members was saying, well, it's for a given use case, probably less than 10 minutes in the level 1. And the other point is also who should be owning this catalog and who should be contributing. Essentially, there is a lot of diverse data points where there is probably not that one single department that can populate it all, but it's actually a collaborative effort out of business people, legal people, IT people. All right. Maybe Franco, you can share some statistics also on the downloads since we launched it.
Well, actually, since launch that took place in early February, we have seen close to 300 downloads, which I think is numbers within what we were expecting. And also what's surprising is the variety of people and firms who were downloading the firm. So of course, many from the asset management industry, but also from other sectors of financial services, such as insurance and banking. And also we can see it from other firms going beyond the financial services industry. I think it actually makes a lot of sense when you consider that the EU AI Act is a horizontal regulation and actually doesn't apply to any sector in particular, but rather to all sectors of the broad economy.
Great. So thanks for the feedback, helpful demo. Maybe as an outlook also, Franco and I, we are going to record some other videos, much shorter than this webinar, to provide you with the demo. And what we over the time are also going to work with is the so what question to address that, because some of the members then said, so we are answering on certain data points in a given way. What is the consequence for my organization? And this is where we want to work on a user guide for the AI system tool to not just explain to you what and how to populate, but what the impact, depending on the value, is on your organization. There was a question, we actually did not mention that yet on the revisions, yes. So the reason also why we are capturing email addresses when people want to download and request this free tool is to create an email database whenever there is a revision of the tool. So at the moment it's planned that we collect the feedback towards Q3 of this year to look into where the tool can be further improved, because we are conscious of the fact that this is not a one-off exercise and we need to get feedback from the actual users how to iterate that. So again, yes, the plan is twice a year to look into that, not to become like other templates, something that is updating too frequent, but we are conscious that any feedback is very welcome and may, for the benefit of the whole community, has to be reflected in future revisions. Right? You will find in the disclaimer the contact address where you can also raise in written any feedback on the tool.
I think we have a couple of questions coming in. I think that you can see them from your side, right?
Yes. Start to collect and publish. So I think the first one on the collection of the assessment. So I think one of the things that we also saw is maybe for those who joined from Luxembourg, you will know that last year that CSSF had done this AI use case collection exercise. So they asked all financial market participants in Luxembourg with a unstructured data questionnaire with free text, basically, can you please report about your AI use cases? And when we had someone from the EU AI office at our physical meeting, when we were meeting 2 weeks ago in Brussels, we also said that going forward, if the EU, like the Commission, for example, or the ESAs may plan a similar exercise, they may not want to have firms answering with free text, but in a rather structured way. And here such a tool could pave the way, obviously, to help also gaining market insights when the regulators want to assess certain things. Any question you want to take, Franco?
I see first. I see the first question maybe. When
Yeah.
I see a couple more coming. Will you be maintaining this tool on an ongoing basis to incorporate any updates to the Act? Well, of course, if I can take this one, actually, I think it's very relevant in the context of the AI Act and any revisions that it could take place in the future. Of course, the idea of having different sessions on this throughout time and being able to receive feedback from users of the tool, which we really encourage, is that we could actually make it fit for purpose and have a useful and updated tool as much as we can.
Yeah. There's a great question I find. Do you have any guidance, please, on how to determine whether a use case meets the definition of an AI system as per the AI Act definition? The reason why I'm smiling is because obviously that is one of the most difficult questions when it comes to the definition, because of course you're right for the person asking, if it doesn't even fall under the definition of an AI system, I won't have to capture it at all in the system assessment tool. Since there at the moment, unfortunately, is a bit of regulatory uncertainty now with the new contact that we have with the AI task force from EFAMA into the EU AI office, we're currently collecting members' questions that we want to address at the AI office. And this question, as it was asked, is obviously one of the two most relevant. One is the situation of what is the definition of an AI system, so that not suddenly my Excel macro becomes an AI system and has to be reported. On the other hand, also a very big topic is when I'm considered as a provider versus a deployer, because obviously the regulatory requirements and things to consider according EU AI Act, they differ very much whether you are a provider or a deployer. And we see often that firms in larger groups have central units that are carrying out and developing AI systems that are then being used in other entities. And here it's, for example, the question, can I even have a deployer provider within the group, or even within the same entity, can I have both statuses of deployer and provider? So again, we don't have, unfortunately, all regulatory answers on this side, but we plan to obtain at least further guidance as much as we can via the EU AI office. So what are your recommended approaches to manage bias in an AI system? Are there any robust but straightforward ways that do not require advanced AI engineering? I would say that such a question is rather technical and really related to the actual delivery of AI systems. This being said, that would also fall into as a question into our next deliverable as an EFAMA AI task force, where we want to work on what we would call guiding principles. On the one hand, for regulatory questions like deployer provider or definition of AI system, but also on the other hand, on the practical appliance of AI. And when we discussed with our task force members what are topics that we want to address, then these are, for example, things like what is the typical policies and governances that firms have in place? What is the trainings that firms provide? What is the testing and documentation that firms apply and provide for their AI system? And the bias question would go in the same direction. Yes. Any other, Franco?
I see also another one on when can we have access to the videos. So the tutorials you were referring to before. This will be made available to the public very soon. Actually, recording and edit of the video is taking place as soon as this week, so we could expect it in the coming few days. So it will be announced through EFAMA's usual channels, and then it will also be available in EFAMA's website together with the AI system assessment tool.
Exactly. I would also say over the course of March, the latest. And since you are registered in the EFAMA list of emails, as soon as you have requested the download of the tool, whenever there is a new version or there is new guiding documents or videos, then we can always inform this list of people. So therefore, you don't have to necessarily be afraid to miss out on something. Just request to download the tool and you become part of the distribution list for any future updates. Great. I think there is one last question. Did you look at this tool having in mind information required under DORA ROI? No, because the focus was really the EU AI Act in the very detail. We have touched on DORA quite high level. You will see that in the level 2 where there is a dedicated DORA section. But again, if that is not comprehensive enough, feel free to customize this regulatory section for your own needs, as well as to provide written feedback to us for future revisions. Another question, will this tool help in the assessment of a gap analysis exercise to see whether or not the institution, in this case a credit institution, falls in scope of AI requirements, especially due to third-party suppliers? I'm not really sure about this question or the particular requirement as such. Franco, are you?
Not much that I can say. Because for the same reasons, I'm not familiar with this provision.
When there is another question on the inventory regarding general purpose AI systems, as they are part of the EU AI Act, you will find questions related to this in the level 2 regarding general purpose AI systems.
I see also another question regarding if we're planning to publish a report on the status of AI adoption in our industry. That's actually a very valid question. So we are currently discussing what kind of approach we want to do. Definitely, we would like to share some of the key figures and maybe some infographics with the public. Of course, the wider the numbers of adoption, the more we can use it as a measure of success of the AI tool being adopted and deployed across the industry. So yes, definitely we will publish something along these lines.
Yeah, I think we also want to leverage this distribution list from all the firms requesting the template to launch surveys in the future, so that we can get exactly such market insights that EFAMA then can publish to show adoption rates and what is focus areas of asset managers. Because of course, these may even be the questions that when interacting with the EU AI office are the questions that we get back from them. like what is the industry working on? What are you struggling with? What should we be doing? And clearly, we also want to form opinions as we have done on other regulatory matters in the past, like PRIPS and MiFID, etc., doing lobbying effort for the asset management industry, especially on areas where we have a firm position that we want to justify. Yeah, I see a similar tool for the ISO 42001 would be great. We have obviously not been looking into any certification standards like the 42001 for AI management systems, but that is something where we can certainly in future iterations look into potential overlaps or connections that firms who envisage to go for such an ISO certification may be benefiting from the fact that they have already populated such a tool. Because maybe in one way or another, the tool already helps you to tick certain boxes required under this ISO standard. I'm saying maybe because we simply haven't been looking into this ISO framework in the version 1. Our focus was really the EU AI Act.
Of course, that actually makes a lot of sense, and it goes in line with the original reason why we developed this tool and the purpose of it, which is largely to standardize and to harmonize practices across the market, right?
Yeah.
One thing that we were concerned about, and the reason for this tool is that different firms would take very similar AI systems and perform the assessments in different ways, just for the reason that there was no tools available. And part of this is to facilitate efforts for firms.
There is another question. I think attendees always kindly wait until we finish one question to then drop the next one. So we constantly keep on receiving questions, which is great and why we had this session or have scheduled this session. There is another question on the EU AI office on the definitions regarding AI literacy. One aspect should be mentioned is the EU AI office has recently themselves published some materials which you may want to consult when it comes to AI literacy. Now, this being said, at the moment, it seems to be a bit of an open source platform where firms can send their literacy to the EU AI office and they are publishing this. I think that's an area we want to further follow up with the EU AI office because we're not necessarily looking into literacy that is published or developed by individual organizations. We are rather keen to understand more what is in general needed to create as literacy within an organization, and that is the same with the level of training, because the Article 4 of AI Act regarding training is also rather vague in a way that it says you have to provide training that is fit for the level and the use of the person that has access to an AI system, but what does it mean? The only thing that EU AI Office recently publicly stated in one of their webinars was saying that they do not have the intention to move into any labeling regime or provide certifications when it comes to AI and training. So there is no plan to have sort of a certification EU-wise on AI training. Then there is another, does this tool help to define what it means for providers and deployers? I think, again, this is where we want to do a complementary document on the so what questions, because exactly on such a question, you may populate now the inventory template in a certain way on a given use case, and then you have to draw the conclusion at the moment yourself based on your knowledge and your understanding of the EU AI Act, right? Obviously, we as a task force and EFAMA as an industry body, we have to find the right balance between helping the industry but not providing suddenly legal advice and then be held accountable for this. So we can always only provide guidances from what we understand and what we get as a feedback from the regulatory bodies, but we will never be in the position, I'm afraid, to give you some definite guidances on regulatory aspects. Right. I think we are at the time. Is there one quick last question? There is not. Well, then I can only say thanks a lot for all your questions. Thanks for joining with so many people. Franco, the last words, over to you.
Well, thank you for everybody for joining. I hope this was useful to you, and we hope to get feedback from everybody once you had time to download the tool and make your appropriate uses and modifications to it. So happy to receive your messages.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Nice rest of your day. Bye.